Okay, nice to see you. I'm Dave, and this is the Pennant Racing channel. It's apparent that I'm talking too fast in these things. Quit drinking a few months ago, which is good. It wasn't much, 1-2 beers a night when I'd be out here working, but it seemed to be wearing me down. So I quit, and yep, I'm like the happiest ever I've ever been, far more productive. But I've got all this energy, so I think I talk too fast during videos, stumble over myself, get caught up in things. Anyhow, I apologize for that. But thanks for watching. I'm going to try to do a good job for you. Now, I'm going to try to slow it down. So I'm going to put this top end back together on this 300 XC. It's been apart for a while. I'm amazed at how many people write in wanting to know things about what to look for when rebuilding things. I'm amazed at how many pictures come in of pistons, cylinder walls, so forth, just asking general things. So I'm going to go through what I've learned to look for, and you can take it for what it's worth. So first, of course, you look at the piston, probably the first thing that you see, or when you take the head off, of course, you'd see the inside of the cylinder. Pull that stuff. I look at the piston. You can look at my piston here. It's got quite a few runs on it. This is a Vertex cast piston. You can see that the coating has come off on both sides. That's no big deal. That's normal. But that's its job, right? It's kind of wear away. I look for scratches, though. And you can see on this piston that we don't have any scratches, so looking good there. Take a look. Now I look at the cylinder. I'm looking for scratches on the top of the cylinder. I don't really care too much about below the exhaust port unless it's really scratched up, but it's on anything that's on top of the bottom of the exhaust port or on top of the bottom of the transfer ports, where you'll see there's a little arrow drawn in here. That's where the ring travels, so that's where it needs to seal. I look for it being nice there. If I've got a bunch of scratches, that's a problem. You can't hone these things too many times, maybe once or twice on a stock cylinder to clean them up a little bit with a ball hone. If it's got a few little things, I don't worry about that. But this one's looking really good, So take a look at it, and got a few little wear lines, but it's nice. So I'm cool there. I look at the ring, depending on how things are running, to make sure that it's broken in. And what I'm looking for there is the face of the ring being cut all the way down. And if it's shiny all the way down, that means it's cut in and flat. It's easy to see now with the phone. You used to have to do this kind of stuff with the magnifying glass when I was a kid. Now you just put it on the camera, put it on 5 times. You can look at it through the phone, and you can see if it's shiny all the way down the face. You can see these pics here. They're not the clearest in the world, but you get the idea. So that's good. That means that it's fully broken in. Gonna take a little side trip here for a second. The piston ring has a curvature on the outside of it, and what I'm looking for is if it's flat all the way down, if it's shiny all the way down, that means this is worn down, and I'm seating from the top of the ring to the bottom of the ring, which is what I want. There was a time where I'd been given various oils to play with that were so slippery, these synthetics, that it wouldn't even allow the ring to break in. It was so slippery that the coarseness of the crosshatch couldn't do its job and cut away the face of the ring. And they just never had the power, and you'd pull them apart and you would finally look at them, and just only right here in the middle would be shiny. So you had to go to more petroleum-based oil, get some of the slickness out of it, then they would cut all the way in, then you were good. Then you could go back to your fancy, really slick oil. Sometimes I've seen people even put the rings in upside down and wonder why they just never really make any power. So a ring has a marking on the top of it. It's usually an N or a T. That you want to face towards the top. That's because the ring has a cut profile. One side's tapered, one side's flat. The tapered side needs to go to the top. That's what causes the cutting in. The gases sneak along the side of the piston here, going through these ring lands. It pushes on the top of this taper, which forces the ring out into the cylinder wall. At that point, the crosshatch that's in the cylinder, kind of the roughness in it, then it can cut this away. If the ring's in upside down, it'll still fit, it'll still go together, probably even still start and run a little bit, but you don't have the force pushing on the taper to push the ring out to cut it in, and it will never really run right. So if you're having an issue, you could look for that. I was running initially on my pretty slick Klotz R50, which I like, and it was taking quite a while to break in when I would take it apart and look at it, so I went to a more petroleum-based oil. I went back to my Legend oil that I like. It's basically half petroleum and half synthetic, so it allowed the crosshatch to do its job, not as slick as this dude, and then it cut in. Nowadays, I just ensure that they're going to cut in. I just use this oil, this Dumont Tech break-in oil. I'm assuming that it's all petroleum based. I'll run a tank through 2 gallons. At that point, I know that it's pretty much good and cut in. Then I just switch over to my other oil. Same ratio. If I'm running 40 to 1, I just run 40 to 1 with everything. But this stuff isn't expensive, so keep it in mind just to ensure that it's cut in and broken in. And of course, your compression will go up over time. If you put it together and everything's fresh, based on when it's broken in, then it always goes up anywhere from, 10 to 20. I mean, just depending on where the stuff is, but it will go up. So 2 last things. One is these cylinder base gaskets. I did a video where I put pressure in it, and you can see bubbles coming out of the base gasket. These new TBI bikes that I'm taking apart, there's no kind of sealer at all on these things. The older bikes that I'm taking apart, carb bikes, TPI bikes, there would usually be like a little clear silicone on both sides of it. So it created a little bit of a seal, but it didn't stick it to the cylinder so bad that you just had to scrape it off for years, it seemed. Now, after that leak, there was more than one person, but I remember a guy in Hawaii goes, hey, you think it would be leaking into my coolant? And I said, sure, if it's leaking out here, it could easily be leaking the other way and going into your coolant, because he said, I'm always boiling over. It doesn't take very long. So, yeah, he took it apart and siliconed this stuff up a little bit, put it back together, never had a problem since. And he said, wow, can you believe that? That's what the problem was. So I always do this a little bit, just this clear RTV silicone. The last thing is these O-rings. Big problem with the O-rings. If you use the stock stuff, if you get the stock stuff, not a problem. The problem occurred with another company called Cometic. They make gaskets that are out of America. So these are metric size O-rings. And even though the KTM site, like on this middle O-ring, would say 2 millimeters by 78, you measure this thing out and it's 2.03 millimeters, 2.06 millimeters. That and this one that goes on the top of the chamber here, very important to have the correct size ones. So I had some Cometic ones, and it's funny how I got it figured out. I just put the bike together. I hadn't even put coolant in it yet. I checked the compression on it because I had made a cylinder head change. Well, I apologize, I hadn't. I just did taking things apart and decided to put new O-rings in it. Well, now all of a sudden, just turning the thing over, the thing's running 15 PSI less compression. Now that was a little bit of a tough one to figure out. Come to find out, even like this one here that I'd measured out at 2.06 stock, 1.93, 1.94 millimeters. This one was slightly smaller because they were using American sizes. This shouldn't have flexed up and caused an issue because of the fact that it should have been metal on metal and shouldn't really created a flex. But I thought maybe the compression gauge was leaking a little bit, so I sprayed some soapy water around the top. It was leaking, but it wasn't leaking at the gauge. It was leaking up out of this hole. It seems that this was flexing up just enough, and the pressure was coming out of the cylinder, sneaking around this O-ring, which was a little small, entering this chamber and coming up to where that's where the problem was. So now if I had filled that up and ran it, I would have been getting blowing coolant all over the place or getting it in my engine. So that's not a good deal on Cometic's part, really. But anyhow, now you know. Okay, that's it.